nurses want to be a part of innovation and changing healthcare and using their clinical experience to do that in a way that's, I think, not yet truly defined.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Rosa DiDonato.
And I'm Marian Leary.
And you're listening to Amplify Nursing, a Penn nursing podcast supported by the Pinola Fund for Innovation in Nursing.
Amplify Nursing features nurses who are leading the way in science, policy, and innovation.
Our guests defy stereotypes, define practice, and disrupt convention.
We highlight the breadth and depth of nursing influence on society by amplifying nurses who are pushing boundaries and breaking down barriers to build a new paradigm. Today on Amplify Nursing, we talk with Sarah Gray, founding nurse and clinician at Trusted Health, a company that's reimagining how nurses work. As a clinical nurse working at the bedside, Sarah felt like she wanted a different perspective on how to innovate and creatively solve for the problems she was seeing in her practice. Unsure how to move her career in that direction, she was ultimately drawn away from the bedside to the health tech scene in San Francisco. Today, she's helping to lead the change in the clinical and non-traditional nursing workforces, which she hopes will eventually allow for more sustainability and growth in the profession.
Thank you so much for coming to speak with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So would you mind introducing us to your audience?
Sure. My name is Sarah Gray. I am the founding clinician and founding nurse here at Trusted Health, which is a San Francisco-based startup aimed at fundamentally changing the way nurses work and manage their careers. I started here just over 2 years ago before making, quite the career change from working clinically bedside at UCSF, where I started my career as a new grad as part of their program on a pediatric medical surgical unit, and, held different roles at UCSF. I was a charge nurse pretty quickly. I became a clinical nurse 3, became very interested in improving care delivery from the nurse's perspective, and so took on a couple projects, did an evidence-based practice fellowship, and ultimately knew I didn't want to spend the rest of my career at the bedside, but from a place that allowed me to innovate or creatively solve the problems that I was facing as a nurse every day. And so I wasn't sure what that would look like initially, but ended up at an early stage startup, and here I am 2 years later.
So tell us a little bit about Trusted Health. What is it that you're doing there?
So at Trusted, we have built a platform that enables nurses to understand what opportunities exist and easily connect to them. And so the problem we're solving is that we're seeing nurses, the nursing workforce, it's changing in that what we want, what we value, how we want to manage our careers is different. And we want the same seamlessness, technology, and resources that really we have to manage every other aspect of our lives. And we now expect that for our career in a way that allows us to work a bit more flexibly, with more variety, and really being able to understand what opportunities exist and what they might mean for the future of our career and how it aligns with what growth means for each one of us as nurses. And so that's what we do. We've built the technology that allows nurses to easily do that. And where technology can't replace that human element, we have a team of nurse advocates who are all clinical nurses who have left the bedside to help fundamentally change the way nurses can manage their careers.
Okay, that sounds great. How do you think that, is this just for nursing or is it for healthcare in general?
Currently, it's just for nursing. It's where we took our initial focus, but we recognize that the problem we're solving is not one that just nurses face, and we have other healthcare professionals signing up on the platform every day, seeking the same kinds of technology and resources, which we don't provide opportunities for them quite yet, but we definitely see a need to be able to do that.
So your platform, is it just like a technological thing, or do you offer coaching and all of that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, like I said, we don't believe that technology can entirely replace that human element. Similar to nursing is, nurses are not going to be fully replaced by technology anytime soon. And that human element is just so important in the relationship building and support for nurses. And so The team of nurse advocates, their role is to really complement and supplement the technology to create the best experience possible, to be that empathetic, supportive, knowing person on the other end of the line who knows what it means to be in your shoes and what it means to be a nurse and all of the nuances of nursing. And so they provide the coaching, the support. Their whole job is to ensure that nurses understand how the technology works, and to be the human element that helps them understand how they can effectively manage their career with the technology.
So what motivated you to leave the bedside to get into the startup?
That's a good question. I don't think it was any one thing. Penn does a great job at from day one, making you think really, really big about your career and that there are no limitations to what you can do as a nurse. And over the years at UCSF, I was constantly challenged and stimulated by the different roles I held and getting involved in different levels, but ultimately, I think became really frustrated working within the confines of healthcare and not being able to solve what I felt like were like the pretty simple, straightforward problems that nurses face every day. I always said as a nurse, I never wanted my job to be easier. We know what we sign up for, the nights, the weekends, holidays, difficult situations, but I felt that I was spending so much of my time not actually with the patient delivering the care, but making sure that I had the supplies and the resources and problem solving in a way that didn't contribute necessarily to the outcomes for my patients. And so I got involved, like I'd said, in a couple different projects and figuring out how I could do that, but ultimately realized I needed the tools and the resources from a different perspective and on a different level to be able to do that in a way that I felt could be really impactful. And so I actually considered going to business school. I did a lot of research, and it didn't feel like there was an established career path for nurses that aligned with the direction I saw I saw myself taking my career. And so business school felt kind of like the only option. And, I had started the application process, but thankfully I had a mentor who really encouraged me to look at what was happening from an innovation standpoint here in San Francisco and all of the healthcare tech and new companies that were cropping up. And so I did look into that, although to be totally transparent, I was pretty skeptical that somebody would look at my resume and see all of my clinical experience and really understand what I could bring to the table with that experience and not having that, that business background or any other previous experience working for a startup, and was pleasantly surprised.
So do you think it was your clinical acumen that really made you stand out? It's been my experience that I feel like the people in the business world are usually super impressed with the clinical experience of people coming in.
That's what I discovered. And I think that it's those who understand what nurses do and the unique set of both hard and soft skills and everything that you gain from that clinical experience, right? Like being a clinical nurse requires you to essentially master so many different roles. And so as we grow the company here, and we started hiring into different roles, I didn't have a clear understanding of what doing those roles entailed and the skill set you would need to be successful in them. And I realized that actually nearly every role that we have here at Trusted, each one of us nurses have done in a different way. It just looked a little bit different, or the end user was a patient rather than, a typical user. And so I found that, I was lucky in that Trusted is a nurse-centered company, and that everything that we do is centered around the nurse and with a nurse's first perspective. And so it felt pretty serendipitous that I met my co-founder. But as we've grown and now we employ hundreds of nurses that we connect opportunities through our extended workforce, but internally there are now nearly 20 of us nurses that work for Trusted. And what's been really rewarding is to see how every other member of our trusted team, I think, has gained a deeper understanding of what it means to be a nurse and what clinical experience really brings to the table and what that entails and how that can apply to so many different aspects of working for a high growth company.
So how do you think other nurses can show their skills to technology companies and so forth?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's a matter, I mean, what I tell nurses ask me every day, how did you end up working for a startup and how do I do that? And I think the first step is a matter of really putting yourself out there because that's essentially, that was the first step for me. I was skeptical, but I did it. And there are so many companies and opportunities now for nurses to play a part in innovating healthcare on so many different levels. And so I think it's thinking big and putting yourself out there in terms of understanding what different companies are doing and how potentially a role may align with what you want for your future. And I think that's something though that's not talked too much about in nursing, and it's Penn does a great job of it, but what can you do as a nurse, right? You're told as a nurse there are so many opportunities within nursing. You can be clinical, you can switch specialties, you can hold so many different roles, work in different care settings. But I think at least what I've heard from my peers is a couple years in, you kind of look around wondering where those opportunities are, how you connect them, or what you're truly qualified for. I think that was the mental barrier in my mind was I didn't understand how that clinical experience could translate into a different like care setting, so to speak. That's essentially, I feel like what I'm doing now is I'm working in a different care setting and caring for patients from a different perspective, and obviously not firsthand. But it's I think doing a little bit of understanding in terms of the specialty you work in or the experience you bring to the table, like what's really under that, right? Is it customer service? It's problem solving. It's customer success. It's business development. Like if you think about everything a nurse does and how it translates, and then making that, I think finding a company where you feel like that aligns, and then finding the right people who understand the value that you can add. I think that's the big piece is the right people.
Right. So how, considering that your company is working on the careers of nurses and putting them in touch with, jobs that they would really like to do, where do you see the profession heading? What are some of the hotter jobs that people want, and what is it that nurses are trying to do with their careers?
So nurses, what we're seeing, and so what we currently are most focused on are connecting nurses to what we call flexible work opportunities. They're also called travel. It's called travel nursing, but the misconception is that you actually have to relocate or travel for these jobs. But what we're seeing is that nurses are interested in like the variety, the flexibility. They don't want to go and work on a unit for 20 years anymore. That's far too long. What we're seeing is even 5 years is a bit much for a lot of nurses who kind of want to know, they want to experience that growth and progress in their career, but I think they perceive it to look different today than it maybe has for different generations. And so that's not necessarily going back to school after just a few years or getting a master's or simply switching specialties. I think it's really like the general workforce wants more of these things as well, but I think there are, clinical experience has limitations in terms of, right, like, I mean, telehealth will get us there, but as a nurse, it's difficult to work remotely in a clinical way. And so what we're seeing, our nurses are very attracted to travel nursing because there's the control, because you're only ever committing to potentially 13 weeks at a time, and you can control how you how much time off you have in between contracts, or where you're going to work, what next contract you're going to work. And you can go and work at a couple different facilities that are, can be very, very different, whether it's a teaching hospital and a magnet hospital or a small community hospital. And they're also finding that like the geographic setting in which they're living provides that variety that I think that they are craving rather than being in any one place for too long. And then as travel nurses or these contract nurses, they're gaining a different perspective and insight into how different care delivery can look, even on the same types of units, but at different healthcare facilities. And it gives them an opportunity to really understand what they value, where they potentially do want, like what areas of nursing that they do want to pursue for further education. And what we're finding is, so nurses are taking jobs for a couple years. They're then attracted to travel nursing, where they're gaining this breadth of experience, meeting new people potentially every 3 months. They're needing to learn how to quickly adapt and get up to speed in different environments and cultures. And then they're gaining a deeper understanding of what they want from that point for their careers, and potentially going back to school or potentially returning to a healthcare facility that they, that they felt very supported, or where they were able to maintain that passion for care delivery that sometimes, they can lose in experiencing burnout or such boredom in that they don't feel challenged or stimulated in a way that they want to feel. And so I think the future of nursing is going to be more flexible. I don't think it's necessarily going to fit into this, right? Like I had said, 20 years on a unit. It's not going to be necessarily just a 13-week travel contract. It's not going to be just clinical. So we have nurses here at Trusted who work for the company who are nurse advocates and utilize their clinical experience every day, but also still work per diem clinically. And so I think what we'll see is that they're, like we had said, a few minutes ago, is nursing is such a flexible profession. There are so many things you can do. And I think with the technology to understand what opportunities exist, we'll see that various types of those opportunities will be combined, or nurses will, leverage one type of flexibility for a period of time before switching into another one. But I think just from working here at Trusted and growing our team of nurses want to be a part of innovation and changing healthcare, and using their clinical experience to do that in a way that's, I think, not yet truly defined. And, I think that's where nursing is going, is more non-traditional career opportunities.
Yeah, you mentioned that, historically people would pick a spot and stick there for, 20 years or so, and that would be their job. And that's not what's going on anymore. So what do you think is causing that shift?
That, I think it's a multi-factor situation, in that it's, maybe in some places it's so some reasons nurses seek like change or travel opportunities are like compensation is a big one. Nursing is so different geographically, by care setting, by healthcare facility. And I don't think there's a lot of transparency and information about how that differs and why. And so, like I said, nurses seek that growth and progress. And for some of them, that means increases in growth and compensation. And so they look towards travel nursing, or, the ability to work in different places where it potentially, like, nurses are higher compensated. I think it's also the different working conditions. And so a lot of travel nurses eventually end up in California if they don't at least start their travel journey in California. And it's typically because of the protected ratios, the working environment, the mandated breaks. So many nurses that we place in travel contracts in California can't, depending on where they've started their nursing career, where they've come from, can't believe what nursing is like in California. And the question that they ask is, why isn't it like this in other parts of the country or everywhere else? And I think what we'll see is that the expectations for nurses will change, and the standards will change, because what nurses are willing to do and how they're willing to work and manage their careers is changing. And then I think nurses are really, not that they haven't been historically, but are really ambitious, passionate, and I think that that's how we're training the nursing profession more and more, which is incredible. And I owe a lot of my career trajectory and passion for seeking new opportunities to Penn and thinking bigger. But I think that that's what we're seeing is that nurses, I generally, the workforce, I think, just has different expectations for what it means to grow your career and manage it. And so working on a unit for, an extended period of time, I think doesn't contribute to what those values are.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. What do you think also about the fact that, as you said, nursing is so different in California than it is in many different parts of the country? Do you think our nursing professional organizations need to be a little bit more proactive in standardizing what nursing is across the country?
I do. I think I recognize that that's certainly a challenge and will take some time, but I think so. And I think standardization feels in some ways like a scary word to apply to a profession and working conditions and ratios, because I recognize that there is justification for the variability that exists now, but I don't believe that the variability needs to be so wide ranging and that it needs to exist in all aspects of the nursing profession and how nurses manage their careers. But I think the first step in that is understanding, like being really proactive and understanding what the future nursing workforce values and involving them in decision making and really understanding what will happen for the nursing workforce if things don't change. And we've started to see it, but I think that there could be major implications in that nurses are not going to stay clinical. They are, like I said, like even a couple years into their career, are seeking opportunities away from the bedside. And not that that's a bad thing. We need nurses in non-clinical positions, but we also need nurses in clinical positions. And so how can we change the standards for the nursing profession in a way that allows for like sustainability and growth within the career, within the profession?
So where do you see the future of nursing headed?
I think the future of nursing, I think nursing education is going to look different in the near future, or I think that even nursing education is so different geographically and by school, and I think that there can be a bit of standardization there, but I think nurses earlier on will be educated about the different opportunities exist, that as a nurse you can gain clinical experience and use it in different ways, or you can be a nurse without any clinical experience and what that looks like. And I think our education traditionally has been very focused on just the clinical component, that educating nurses to think bigger and really giving them the insight into what the different non-traditional, and maybe in the near future, they won't be considered non-traditional, but the different opportunities. And I think nursing, I certainly think technology will continue to change the way nurses work in a way. The way I see it is similar to what we're doing here at Trusted is we're building the technology to create self-sufficiency, to make it really easy for nurses to self-service information, knowledge, but we don't believe that human element can be replaced. And so we're shifting the human element to supplementing and complementing the technology to create the most impact and the best experience possible. And I think that that's how technology is going to change the way nurses work, to enable us to do our jobs more efficiently, potentially, dare I say it, care for more patients at once, but also have more of an impact on the patient experience because of the human element, the critical thinking, the empathy, the actual like delivering of the care. And everything else, I think the technology will help get everything else out of our way.
So you were talking a little bit back about the changing how nurses are educated. What do you think that looks like? And do you think that's something that we should be focusing on early in a nursing career, like with BSN students, or do you think it's something that would be best to do with like already clinically based nurses and or like graduate nurses?
I think it starts even sooner. And so
Mhm.
when we need to attract more individuals to the workforce. And as I, I think part of it is that it's not widely or broadly understood what a nurse does, what it means to be a nurse, and what you can do as a nurse. And so I think if we can create more transparency and knowledge around that, you open people's minds up to the profession as a career choice, that maybe wouldn't consider it otherwise because they just didn't really truly understand. And I can say I didn't know that I didn't know forever that I wanted to be a nurse, and it wasn't until I really understood what nurses do, and what you can do as a nurse that I was like very, very attracted to the profession. So I think it's early and earlier than, but in terms of actually formally educating, I do think it's BSN. So I was fortunate enough to take a class undergrad called Quality Care Challenges in an evolving healthcare market with Krista Panola. And I think that in hindsight changed the way I thought about my career. That was one of the first nursing classes that I took that really resonated with me in a way that was, it obviously it all applied to clinical care, and the project that we completed at the end of that course was how we made that clinical care more streamlined and efficient. But it was looking at care from a different angle, that I don't think I previously thought about. I hadn't had that perspective before, and didn't know that I could be in a position to do that and impact care in that way. And so I certainly think it's early on, and talking about what innovation means, what it means to potentially work at a startup as a nurse. Before 2 years ago, I had no idea what that looked like, and it felt like a terrifying career shift, and it was hard in that I didn't really have anyone to help me understand what that would look like, and it was kind of creating as you go, which was certainly exciting and very fulfilling. But that's something I'm really passionate about, is talking more about hey, you can go into the nursing profession, and we have a joke here at Trusted. Everyone that's not a nurse, we ask why, do you think you could be a nurse? And if not, why? And their why answer, there's often or their why not answer is often can be responded to in that, oh, well, that's actually not just what nursing is, or if you can be a nurse and not have to do that type of thing. So I think it's early on. And not just educating them early on what the different opportunities are, but I remember being quite shocked as a senior trying to determine where I was going to start my career, where I was going to get my license initially, and California came up as an option for me because my now husband's job took us out here, and I just couldn't believe that I had not understood that nursing was so different depending on where you worked, where you start your career, where you get licensed. And so I think it's about more knowledge, more information beyond how we deliver care and the standards for doing so.
Yeah, that's really a very insightful answer to the question. I really appreciate you calling in today. We really enjoyed talking to you and learning all about what you're doing in your startup. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's Penn Nursing has obviously a very special place in my heart, and So someday I think I'll make it back there, back east. But I love what you guys are doing, and like how much we're aligned in what we want for the future of nursing.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, we'll talk to you
Thank
later.
you.
Hello, Marion.
Hey, Angela, how's it going?
It's amazing. How are you?
Fabulous.
So we had this great conversation with Sarah Gray, who I absolutely love her energy. She's so excited about the potential for nurses.
Yeah, I really love the work that she's doing and the insights she has about where the profession is right now and where the workforce is going. And, she talks a lot about how what nurses want now is very different than what nurses have been doing in the past, meaning nurses who are working clinically don't want to be on a unit for 20 years anymore at the bedside. They really are looking for more flexibility. And I find it really fascinating. And I don't know about you, but I hear similar things all the time when talking to nurses at the bedside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like nurses don't understand the value of the skill set that they have. And I don't feel as though institutions recognize the importance of keeping their nursing workforce happy. I mean, I think the crux of the whole thing is, everyone wants utility, everybody wants autonomy in their job and some variety of things. And I don't think that institutions in general realize that nurses need to be able to be creative. They need to have some autonomy over their practice. And we're going to start to see people leaving the bedside en masse if they don't start to do something about it.
Yeah, I totally understand. I really think, though, nurses have a great opportunity right now. They can work at the bedside if they want, and that's great, and we need them there. But I really want nurses to begin to understand the many other places where they could be working and practicing. And again, that's what Sarah was talking about, right? Like, nurses don't quite understand the value that they could bring to non-traditional workplaces as a nurse. Mm-hmm. And non-traditional workplaces don't always recognize the skills that nurses could bring to their organization. And so there's a lot we need to do to educate both sides and to allow nurses and the next generation of nurses to really embrace the nursing of profession in a whole variety of ways that may not be what it was like 50, 70, 80 years ago. Times are changing, and the profession needs to change along with it.
Amplify Nursing is hosted by Dr. Angela Rosa DiDonato and Marion Leary, and produced by the University of Pennsylvania School of Nursing, with special thanks to our Department of Information Technology Services for their assistance. Music for the podcast was created by Harper Leary. The podcast is made possible by the Krista and Rich Pinola Fund for Innovation in Nursing.
Follow us on Twitter at Penn Nursing. Until next time, keep pushing over, under, around, and through. We want to thank you for listening to the Amplify Nursing podcast and remind you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcast listening. And, if you can, please do us a solid and rate and review us as well. It will go a long way in amplifying our episodes.